For 40 years, I had lived by orders, protocols, and the iron discipline of the military. I had faced firestorms, life-or-death decisions, and the constant uncertainty of war zones. Yet nothing in all those years could have prepared me for the call that came on that ordinary Thursday morning. The call that ended my final deployment and changed everything. I was reviewing security reports in a dimly lit operations room when my commanding officer entered silently, holding a folder that spoke before he did. My retirement was effective. Immediately. No ceremony. No transition period. Just done. 40 years of service, condensed into a few lines on a sheet of paper. I packed my duffel bag with mechanical precision. Uniforms folded, boots polished, medals untouched. My father's pocket watch rested in my jacket, a constant reminder of a promise whispered decades ago. Always come back, Shirley. I had always kept that promise, until now. This time, returning home felt different. Heavy. Final. Nay. How? No one knew I was coming. Not my son. Daniel. Not my neighbors. Not a single soul. I wanted to surprise him. For almost 2 years. Deployments. Busy schedules. And the unrelenting demands of life had kept us apart. Missed birthdays, hurried calls, and postponed visits had become the rhythm of our relationship. Yet, I clung to the hope that a simple knock on the door would mend the distance. The overnight flight to Florida stretched endlessly. The hum of the engines was both familiar and alien. A soundtrack to the weight of anticipation and fear. Dawn finally appeared as a pale line on the horizon, and I imagined Daniel's face when he saw me. Would he be asleep? At work? It didn't matter. I say, Count. Sis. I was going home. Whoa. I had to be there for him, to finally close the distance between us. The taxi wound through the quiet streets of his neighborhood, each passing house bathed in soft morning light. Yet Daniel's home immediately struck me as different. The lawn was overgrown, the mailbox sagging under the weight of unopened mail. Curtains were tightly drawn, shielding the inside from view. Peeling paint whispered, neglect. It wasn't a home. It wasn't a home. It was a shell, abandoned in all but physical presence. As I approached the front door, a voice called from across the street. His neighbor, a woman I vaguely remembered from years past, stood frozen in her driveway, holding a watering can that now trembled slightly in her hand. Her pale face betrayed shock and concern. You didn't know, she whispered. My fingers tightened around the pocket watch. Know what? I asked. Her eyes darted nervously toward Daniel's house, and then she told me. The words sliced through me like shrapnel. Daniel had been in the ICU for 2 weeks. Ambulance sirens, flashing lights, chaos in the night. And his wife? She hadn't been there. Not once. Instead, she had been elsewhere, enjoying herself. Yachts, parties, selfies on social media, oblivious to the man fighting for his life. The world tilted. I didn't remember thanking her. didn't remember getting back into the taxi. I only remember one thing. The sheer, gut-wrenching urgency of the moment. I had to see him. Now. I pressed the taxi meter without noticing the amount. My mind already racing, heart pounding harder than any battle I had faced. The house faded behind me as I realized that I wasn't coming home to surprise my son. I was coming home too late. The next steps would lead me to a hospital room no parent should ever enter, and reveal secrets that would shake the foundation of the life my son had built. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and lost hope. A cold, sterile reminder that life and death often meet in quiet corridors. My steps echoed as I moved toward the reception desk, clutching my father's pocket watch in my palm. Every beat of my heart felt unnaturally loud, each step heavier than the last. 2 weeks. That's how long Daniel had been in intensive care, fighting a battle I hadn't known he was facing. 5th floor, ICU. The nurse said softly when I mentioned his name. Recognition flickered in her eyes, and in that instant I knew this wasn't a routine visit. The elevator ride felt endless. My mind raced through impossible questions. He had always been strong, careful, resilient. Dad. What had happened in such a short span of time? How could a man I raised to face the world with courage be reduced to this? Hooked to machines that breathed for him, tubes tracing the lines of a body that no longer obeyed. Room 512. The door loomed at the end of the hallway, small and forbidding. A curtain obscured the interior. I knocked, but waited only a heartbeat before pushing it open. The sight that met me was worse than I had imagined. Monitors beeped incessantly. Tubes and wires ran across his chest, limbs, and neck, mechanical tendrils keeping him alive. His face, once strong and expressive, was hollowed and pale. Shoulders, once broad, seemed swallowed by the thin hospital gown. My son, my only child, lay there stripped of the vitality I remembered. A doctor approached, exhaustion evident in his features. "And Dr. Reynolds," he said quietly, "are you family?" "I'm his mother," I said, barely above a whisper, though my voice felt steadier than I'd expected. Military discipline held me upright, even as my world collapsed around me. He didn't sugarcoat it. Terminal gastric cancer. Advanced. Metastasized. 2 weeks in the ICU. No visitors. No hope. And then, the cruelest blow. His wife had been absent, posting pictures elsewhere, oblivious to the man lying helpless before the world. I moved closer to him. My fingers brushed his hand. Cold. Fragile. The same hand I had held while teaching him to ride a bike, tying shoelaces or comforting him through childhood nightmares. The veins were fragile, the skin impossibly thin. He looked up at me, hazel eyes recognizing me through the haze of medication. "Mom, you're really here," he whispered. His voice cracked, each word a reminder that he was still there, still fighting, still the son I had loved for 35 years. "I'm here," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." A ghost of a smile flickered across his lips. Then, without warning, the monitors changed from a steady hum to a piercing alarm. Nurses and doctors rushed in, voices overlapping in practiced urgency. I was pulled away, pressed against the wall, as life and death collided in a flurry of motion and sound. Minutes later, Dr. Reynolds stepped out, his face grave. "I'm so sorry," he said. And in that instant I understood the truth. I had come home too late. The drive back to his house was a blur. The world outside the cab window, the palm trees, the morning sun, the quiet streets, moved in slow motion, irrelevant to the storm inside me. The hospital handed me his belongings in a clear plastic bag, wallet, phone, wedding ring. Items that once signified a life now felt like relics of a loss I couldn't comprehend. Inside his home, The neglect struck me harder than the hospital. Dishes piled in the sink. Dust coated the furniture. The photos that once captured his life. Graduations, birthdays, vacations. Were gone, leaving only faded outlines on the walls. And the mail. The letters, the bills, the warnings. They painted a picture of abandonment and chaos. Then, the receipts. Luxury boutiques, yacht rentals, extravagant trips. Spending that coincided with the exact days he had been in intensive care. All while he lay alone, fighting for his life. The betrayal burned hotter than grief. I called his wife. She answered from a yacht, music blaring, champagne in hand. No grief. No sorrow. Only casual indifference. "I'm his wife," she said. "What's his is mine." That was the moment I knew. The fight for my son's life was over, but the fight for his legacy had only begun. When I began searching his home for answers, I discovered secrets he had left behind, evidence that proved his illness was only part of the story, and betrayal was the other. Returning to Daniel's house that afternoon felt like stepping into a war zone, but this was a battlefield of silence, dust, and betrayal. The neglected lawn and sagging mailbox had only hinted at the chaos inside. Now, every room told a story of abandonment, deception, and greed. The kitchen was the first to greet me. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, half-empty takeout containers littered the counters, and a thin layer of dust coated every surface. The smell of stale food and neglect clung to the air. The living room wasn't much better. Empty glasses, scattered mail, and the eerie absence of personal mementos that once filled the space. Photos of his graduation, our family vacations, and even his wedding, gone. Only faint outlines remained on the faded paint, shadows of a life that had once been celebrated. I picked up the first stack of mail, scanning through bills, overdue notices, and credit card statements. Each one tightened the knot in my chest. My son had never been careless with money. He had been meticulous, precise. And yet, here were proofs of reckless spending. Luxury boutiques, extravagant restaurants, even yacht rentals, all during the time he had been in intensive care, fighting for his life. My hands shook as I gathered the receipts, lining them neatly on the desk. This was no mistake. No impulsive extravagance. It was a calculated betrayal. I found his laptop next. Password protected. Typical Daniel, cautious and thorough. I powered on his old phone from the hospital bag and discovered a chilling emptiness in the message threads. Messages from his colleagues, reminders, and mundane work communications were there, but nothing from her, except for one archived screenshot. A conversation between her and someone named Alicia, plotting to enjoy my son's money while he lay helpless. Dates matched the hospital stay. Timing was deliberate. Every message screamed intent. I moved to the bedroom. The master suite told another story. His side was neat, untouched, a man's presence still lingering in the small details. A pair of glasses on the nightstand, a neatly folded shirt. Her side, in contrast, was chaos. Designer clothing tossed across the floor, shopping bags from luxury brands, and personal items strewn as if she had left in a hurry. The closet reflected the same divide. His belongings remained orderly. Hers had been plundered, packed, or destroyed. Then, I remembered something Daniel had whispered to me months ago. A hidden stash for emergencies. I searched every corner, every room, until I found it. A small utility room behind a stack of boxes. Behind a hidden panel, narrow stairs led downward into darkness. I flicked on the light and descended. Concrete walls, cold and damp, revealed a small room lined with boxes. Nothing looked out of place at first. Holiday decorations, old textbooks. But a patch of the floor seemed recently disturbed. Using a screwdriver, I pried at the edge of the concrete and uncovered a small metal box. Inside lay a USB drive and a note in Daniel's familiar handwriting. "Mom, if you're reading this, everything has gone wrong. I've left all the evidence here. I trusted you to finish what I could not. Love, Daniel. The video file on the drive hit me harder than anything before. He looked frail, hollowed by pain, yet his eyes were sharp, his mind clear. He explained the diagnosis, his betrayal, and the systematic theft. Every bank statement, receipt, and message he had sent was meticulously recorded. He had been preparing, planning, ensuring that I could act after his death. Tears blurred my vision, but anger took the front seat. This was no longer grief. This was war, a calculated, methodical fight that my son had waged silently, and now it was my turn. With the evidence in my hands, the next step would take me from my son's home to the courtroom, where I would face his betrayer and justice would finally be tested. The courthouse loomed ahead. A modern glass and concrete building that seemed cold and indifferent to human emotion. Yet inside, emotions ran raw. Tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I gripped my father's pocket watch in my hand, a talisman of strength as I stepped into the sterile lobby. Beside me, my attorney, Edward Martinez, moved with confidence, his briefcase bulging with the evidence I had painstakingly collected. Every document, receipt, and recording was a weapon, and today we would wield them with precision. She was already there. Jennifer sat across the courtroom, dressed impeccably in black. Her hair pulled into a severe bun, makeup perfect, posture calculated to convey sorrow. Beside her, a sharply dressed attorney whispered into her ear. To anyone else, she appeared the grieving widow, a woman crushed by loss. But I had seen through the mask. I knew the truth. Behind the grief was greed, calculation, and betrayal. The judge, a woman with steely gray hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through lies, entered, and the courtroom rose. The case was read. Emergency petition for control of the estate assets of Daniel Grant. Martinez stood, presenting my position as the executor of my son's power of attorney, and highlighting the systematic exploitation of Daniel's finances during his incapacitation. For 40 minutes, Martinez dismantled her story piece by piece. Bank statements showed hundreds of thousands of dollars transferred, spent on luxury goods, vacations, and yachts, while Daniel lay in the ICU. A private investigator's report revealed her pattern, a history of targeting men with substantial assets. Recordings captured her coldly discussing the transfer of funds, confirming that every transaction was intentional. My son's final video played in court, his weak but determined voice explaining everything he had discovered and the steps he had taken to protect his estate. Jennifer's attorney countered predictably, claiming the evidence was illegitimate, that Daniel was of unsound mind when he revised his will, and that these were marital assets she had a right to access. But Martinez's evidence was airtight, precise, and damning. Every document corroborated the others. Every recording lined up with bank records. Every message proved intent. The judge listened without interruption, occasionally jotting notes. When both sides had finished, she addressed me directly. "Colonel Grant," she said, voice steady. "What are your intentions regarding the estate?" I drew on decades of military discipline, standing tall, voice strong. "Your Honor, my son's final wishes are clear. He established trusts for charitable purposes, scholarships for young architects, and provided detailed instructions for his assets. I intend to honor his legacy and protect what he built from further exploitation." Jennifer rose, a single tear rolling down her cheek, her performance flawless to the untrained eye. "Your Honor, I loved my husband These accusations are heartbreaking. He would be devastated to see his mother act against me. The judge reviewed the documents once more, then ruled. All estate assets would be frozen. Temporary control granted to me. And Jennifer prohibited from accessing any property or funds until further notice. The gavel struck, sharp and final. Jennifer's facade cracked instantly. Rage replaced sorrow. "You can't do this! That money is mine! The house is mine," she screamed, her voice echoing through the court. Security officers moved subtly closer, prepared to intervene if necessary. I felt no triumph, only resolve. Daniel had trusted me to protect him, and now I had begun to fulfill that promise. But the battle wasn't over. Outside the courtroom, Jennifer wasn't planning to surrender. What awaited me at my son's house would test every ounce of my strength, resolve, and courage. The day after the courtroom victory, a heavy silence hung over my son's house. I had hoped that the judge's order freezing the estate would end chaos, but it had. Jennifer had already returned, moving with purpose, 2 men in tow, throwing items into boxes and bags. Expensive electronics, personal belongings, and even cherished mementos were being taken or destroyed. I stood in the doorway watching the destruction, my father's pocket watch heavy in my hand, the weight of 40 years of discipline grounding me. My voice, calm yet steel-edged, cut through the chaos. "Step away from my son's belongings," she sneered, deliberately dropping a framed photo of Daniel. Glass shattered, his smiling face now marred by cracks. "Ah, the grieving mother returns," she mocked. Just in time to watch everything disappear. I didn't move. 40 years of military service had trained me for confrontations far deadlier than this, and I knew the first step was containment. Martinez, quietly documenting everything on his phone, signaled the police. Within minutes, law enforcement arrived, taking statements, photographing the scene, and ensuring the intruders left. Locks were changed, and a security service was put in place to monitor the property. The immediate crisis was over, but the emotional toll was only beginning. Alone in the house, I began to clean. Carefully collecting shards of glass from Daniel's photo, I paused and allowed the grief to settle fully. Memories of missed birthdays, hurried calls, and the distance that had kept us apart flooded back. I had been deployed while he waited by the phone, hoping I would call. Guilt and sorrow battled with the burning resolve to finish what he had started. That evening, I pored through every piece of evidence Daniel had left. Receipts, bank statements, messages, and the private investigator's report. Each document painted a picture of manipulation, betrayal, and theft. Yet among the chaos, there was also clarity. He had planned meticulously. He had protected what he could. And he had trusted me to finish the fight. The next morning brought a wave of determination. The funeral arrangements already in progress were finalized with military honors, his father and I both having served. Chairs would be filled with colleagues, friends, and those who loved him. A memory board would display photographs of his life, a testament to the man he was. I met with investigators and Martinez to trace the diverted funds. Offshore accounts, shell companies, and elaborate money transfers surfaced, confirming Jennifer's reach extended far beyond what I had imagined. But with the evidence Daniel had left and the authorities engaged, Her schemes began to unravel. Each step we took safeguarded his legacy, ensured his scholarship fund and trusts remained intact, and protected others from falling victim to similar schemes. At the funeral, as the flag was folded and the honor guard performed its solemn ritual, I felt a strange calm. Daniel's legacy was secure. Justice was beginning to take its course. And though the grief was raw, the knowledge that I was fulfilling his final wishes brought purpose to the pain. I placed a hand over the photograph of him as a child, laughing with his father on a distant beach. I promised I'd finish this, Daniel. I promised. And I would. Every court hearing, every investigation, every challenge. This was my mission now, and I would see it through. Not for revenge, but for truth, for justice, for the son I loved, beyond words. The battle was hard, the path steep, but the outcome was certain. Daniel's memory, his life's work, and his generosity would not be stolen. I had inherited a different kind of duty, not one of orders and ranks, but of love, resolve, and unwavering commitment. In the end, the war was over, not on distant battlefields, but within these walls where truth prevailed. Justice was served. And a mother's love honored the son she lost, but never abandoned.